Lena is the worst coworker I have ever had. She is selfish and entitled, and she thinks she can do whatever she wants in her own little Lena world whenever she wants. You don't stay in your section, you don't answer calls, and you are never there when people need you. She is lazy, and her attitude sucks, and I don't know why she wasn't fired months ago. I want her fired now. That was Sarah. And I don't know if you can tell, but Sarah didn't really like me very much. Sarah was a coworker that I had early on in my career, and it was not a secret to me that Sarah didn't like me. We had been working together for months, and she made it very clear that I was not her cup of tea. So I did what any conflict-avoidant person would do, and I stayed as far away from her as I possibly could. If she was on one end of the building, I was on the other. Until that day that I got blindsided, called into HR after hours into the deep, dark depths of the HR back offices and invited into that tiny room where there sat Sarah, my manager, and an HR representative. The only words that started that meeting were, "Sarah, why don't you tell Lena while we're here today?" And then she unleashed. And then it was my turn. "You know what, Sarah? Really? Are you surprised that no one would want to work with you? You want to talk about having a bad attitude with your constant eye rolls and your mumbling under your breath and the cold shoulder. It's no wonder anybody comes to help you when you need help. You want to talk about having a bad attitude? Why don't you look in the mirror?" That is what I wanted to say. What we know is when conflict strikes, when confrontation hits, our mind and our body is flooded with a whole mix of emotions. And neuroscience shows that we actually lose up to 50% of our cognitive ability in those moments. And it's very likely that you are one of two responses in those kinds of moments. I want you to raise your hand for me if you are a fighter. We're talking about fight or flight response. Where are my fighters in the room? All right. And where are my flighters? Run away. Avoid. I tell you what, I used to raise chickens as a kid, and even the flighters become fighters when they're backed into a corner. So that is what I wanted to say. But I didn't. You see, when we find ourselves in those moments, that flight or fight response, I don't know if you know this, it's rarely the best response. And instead, I applied what I had learned in my younger years from psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, who survived World War II and went on to write a book about his observations of those that were imprisoned in Nazi Germany. And this quote has guided me through so much of my life, and I love teaching it to organizations. What he said was, between stimulus and response, we have a space. Between stimulus, the things that happen to us, and our response, we have a space. And it is in that space that lies our greatest human freedom. And that is our freedom to choose how we want to move forward, to choose how we want to think about and proceed with the situations and circumstances that life throws at us. And so when you find yourself in the midst of this emotional chaos that comes from a moment of conflict or confrontation, find that space, and instead of practicing fight or flight, I propose two different F's, and that is focus forward. Find a space and really think about what's happening in that situation. Now, one of the first things we have to be able to do, though, is regain our mental clarity. I'd mentioned 50% of our cognitive ability goes out the window when we experience all of those emotions. And one of my favorite things to teach people is grounding. Because I have people say, yeah, but how? How do you find that space when it sometimes feels so tiny And how do you develop skills that allow you to really stretch that space so that you can make better choices and decisions? Well, I'm going to teach you one of those techniques today. It is my favorite technique because it can be used with all of those hard feelings that are happening in that moment. So what I would like for you to do, because I want you to feel the full effect of this technique, if you are able, would you stand for me? Now, I want you to think about that moment of confrontation, when the emotional tornado starts to spin and that negative electric energy fills the space of your brain. And I want you to ball your hands into fists. And I want you to now pull all of that electricity, that lightning bolt, pull it into your body. Now, those of you that are fighters, I know what you're thinking. I'm going to shoot it back at them. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to hold it. Those of you who are flighters, you may have a tendency to just want to hold it and walk away. But what happens when we do that? We carry all of that negative energy with us, and it starts to weigh on us over time. So we're not going to throw it back. We're not going to walk away and carry it. Fists, I want you to feel that energy. I want you to pull it into your body, feel it go up your arms, through your torso. I want it to take all of those negative emotions you're feeling, and I want you to release your fists and shoot it down into the ground. We don't hold that negative energy, and we don't use it to strike our opponents down. Because when we do that, we do not get the best outcome in our relationships or in our careers. Go ahead and have a seat. So this is a technique that's really easy to embody in the moment, right? Because when we all feel that flood of emotion, that tension is already there. So if we can remind ourselves first to just ball those fists and then think about what we want to do with it. Emotional intelligence isn't just about regulating and controlling our own feelings. Emotional intelligence is also about thinking through the emotions and motivations of the other people involved. And so in that moment with Sarah, I started by stretching that space. I just took a deep breath. And I let a moment of silence happen as they all looked at me, waiting for me to respond. And rather than shooting all that negative energy back like I wanted to, instead I said, Sarah, I don't know what I did to create all of this animosity toward me, but whatever it was, I'm sorry. I would like to have a better working relationship with you, and if you tell me what you need me to do, I will do it. They asked me to leave the room, and they continued to have a bit of a conversation with Sarah. I still don't know what that conversation sounded like, but I do know the way I handled that particular meeting catapulted my reputation among my leadership for what I was capable of in the long term of my career. So in addition to teaching professionals how to take all of the chaos of the negative things that can happen to us and bring it to a place of calm, I'm also incredibly passionate about helping leaders understand how to harness emotional intelligence to elevate engagement on the team. And one of the biggest parts of that for leaders is knowing how to lead conflict, to lead interpersonal conflict at the team level where I believe it belongs. Because if there's one thing I remember from that meeting in HR that day, it was the level of betrayal I felt from my manager. I had no warning. I had no explanation for what I was walking into. And I wish what my leader would have done instead is the things that I now teach leaders to do when it comes to managing conflict at the team level. Come and talk to me first. Ask me what's going on. Ask me my side of the story. And then ask me if I'd be willing to sit down and talk to Sarah. I would have said yes. And then in that meeting, set some expectations and some boundaries and help guide an actual conversation instead of making it a free-for-all. You attack, and then you attack, and then you attack, and then you attack. Those are the things that I wish my leader could have done. Because Sarah and I, while we continued to work together, I never felt like that conflict was fully resolved. And when leaders can address those little interpersonal things on the team, they can come out much more connected and trustworthy. I would love to partner with you to bring emotional intelligence development to your team. I hope to talk to you later. Thank you all so much.